Hello, everyone. Still can't get
Hello.
over that great intro music, honestly. Welcome to The Link, everybody, The Link LatinX for this special monthly edition that we're starting. So, The Link is a collaboration between Pyro Media, APLA Health, and is funded by the CDC. We are joining you for this monthly edition of the Link Latinx. Later, we'll go a bit into introductions and our motivations for starting the show. But we're going to start off with a very familiar segment, everyone. Our good old What's Poppin'. So, yes.
She is the moment. Should I start us off? Or
Yes.
any of y'all want to go first? Okay. So I feel like there's been a lot of like really serious topics in regards to like current events right now. So
Yeah,
I
for
just
sure.
kind
Go
of
ahead.
wanted to briefly start off by mentioning the tragedies going on in Colombia right now, because I feel like that's just been like everywhere right now. And if you're not like following it, you should be, because I think it's an important humanitarian crisis. A lot of countries in the world are facing backlash, having a lot of interesting discussions about police brutality and the effects of it on the people. And Colombia is a prime example right now. So legislation was being proposed that was going to impose heavier taxes for the general public of Colombia, and was going to really adversely affect lower and working class families. So as a result, there was a lot of protesting. And the protesting ended up becoming quite violent, not because of the protesters, but because of police brutality, and they ended up sadly killing many protesters. So what are you guys feeling about that? What do you think about that?
So I have to say that I find out about recently. I actually noticed on Facebook a few posts of people saying, I'm here for Colombia, things like that, right? But I didn't really know what was happening. I'm just being completely honest with you, because this might be what's happening to a lot of us, right? That are so occupied with our everyday things that we don't pay attention to what's going on out there, right? And I was actually watching a special about J Balvin. I don't know if I can say what, but anyways, on TV. And so in the whole process, people were, he was about to have a concern. People were telling him, you need to speak up for us. You are part of the people that represent us, that have space for you to speak up about the issues that we're going through. And he was feeling a little bit attacked, right? Because people were pressuring him to do this. At the same time, he realized that he does have a responsibility, as someone with such a platform, to say something about it. And he did talk at the end of the concert about this young man that was killed by the police, or supposedly that's what the news have shown, right? And he talked about how the government needed to pay attention to what the public was asking for and what the students were asking for. That if it was really no problem there, then people wouldn't be walking on the streets and risking their lives to speak up. There was definitely an issue that they needed to pay attention to. And so he tried to be very like, I'm not going to get in politics, but please pay attention to my people, to the youth, to students that are screaming for help, for you to pay attention to what they need and all of these things. And it is really sad. It is really sad because I'm from Nicaragua, and we have gone through very similar things as Venezuela. I feel their pain. My nephew was one person that was attacked in protests in Nicaragua maybe 2 years ago. And I can just imagine, family losing one of their youth, one of their kids, in a protest. Like, it's horrible, it's terrible. And I wish that nothing of that was happening. I wish the government was really paying more attention to it as well. Definitely.
Do you have any thoughts, Rogelio, on it? Or another topic or something?
Rogelio, can you hear us?
Right. Yeah, I'm having a bit of technical issues, so I'm not sure if you can all
Okay.
hear me.
Okay. Well, and so
Can
I
you guys
guess
hear me?
Yeah.
now we can hear you.
I can. Oh, but you guys can't hear me. I may have to come back.
Okay. Well, we can keep you occupied then. But yeah, so just a little bit more about Colombia, just from what I've seen and been following. So essentially,
well.
as a result of the protests, the finance minister of Colombia ended up stepping down. So some success, and the legislation that they proposed was actually shot down as well because of the massive outcries from the people. But they want to continue protesting until the president actually steps down. So I believe that's the current goal for the protests that are going on there.
Right. And you know what? And sometimes that's not just something that's going to happen from one day to another, maybe years. Unfortunately, that's how normally governments like in Venezuela, Cuba, etc., happens, right? But hopefully there will be a way for them to really pay attention to what the
I
public
don't know what my.
community wants and what they need, and at least try to minimize that instead of attacking people, just listening to them and really giving them something that they can feel like they had some success with what they are asking for. And so hopefully that will be some of the changes that we can see soon. It's yeah, like I said, it's very really a tragic that we can see people dying left and right when they are protesting for something that it should be the right to speak up about. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's very tragic. What should we call it? But yeah, I think it's an interesting trend, especially in the last couple of years. I feel like a lot of countries in Latin America have had these big movements towards more progressive policies and more equality. Like in Bolivia, for example, all of that has been happening for years and years. And then like you said, Nicaragua and Venezuela, and having a lot of push for more equality and socialist aspects in government, and just being more supportive of the people, as opposed to these strong governments who are just kind of hoarding everything. So I think it's a good trend. I mean, I hope moving forward that they're successful in their protests. I hope the president steps down, and I hope that they're able to restructure the government to be more representative of the people and their desires. Yeah. Was there any subjects that you wanted to talk about in What's Poppin'?
Well, we kind of touched about COVID-19 and reopening and all of that. Remember, we were talking about that earlier, and that will be. I don't know how to address it, but I know that many of us are very excited about it. Many people are just really concerned about it. And I mean, everything is fair, right? Everybody, is going to take this opportunity either to keep protecting themselves or protecting others, or to also come out of, we have been not social for a very long time, and it's difficult. We're social beings, it's hard, and not everyone has the support of their families or have loved ones around them that can, in ways to say mentally, give you some kind of support. You know what I mean? And there are many people like myself that don't have family close by, or are single or whatever, and so hey, a little commercial. No, you know what I mean? And so it's harder for some folks to really stick to this, to be completely non-sociable and away from everybody. For example, I try to practice what I teach, harm reduction, and try.
Wow, one thing after the next.
It's okay. It's life. It happens.
Right.
At least I didn't fall from my chair, and it was you, Rogelio. No, I'm joking.
Don't play, Roger.
It's my first time. If something bad was to happen to someone, it had to be you, because we we're new at the link.
Exactly.
So,
I took on all the bad energy for you guys. So you're welcome.
We've seen you great in every episode, so
right.
Your facade is cracking.
Don't play.
way my life's gonna fall right now. So don't worry
Right,
about it.
right. Don't even speak that into existence.
Um,
Anyway, I did want to quickly touch on Colombia because I did have a few thoughts. Over the muffled voices, I did hear some of what you were saying, but yeah, I really think that this is just a reminder that we need to look at these issues in a systemic way and not in an individual way. Because I think that people love to look at like riots or protests, and we can think back to the protests that were going on last year and how so many people were like, well, I understand, but people just shouldn't, mess up buildings, or why do people loot? But I feel like a lot of people, when they see these situations in other countries, they never think to do that to those people. So I think it should be a kind of a reminder that like those conditions are present here too. There are a lot of people who struggle here, a lot of people who struggle to not see justice, who don't see any investment in their communities. And so that we have to see these situations as like broader societal problems rather than individuals that should be, disciplined for taking part in whatever, protests or riots that are going on. And I think it's also a great reminder of just like the legacy that is so many South American countries that support so much more robust action on like economic issues. So many countries have moved towards the left in a lot of economic policies, and they tend to do pretty well up until interventions happen, or up until fascist regimes raise up to kind of quash them. So it's kind of scary what we're seeing now, and but it does give me some hope that the action we're seeing at least is going to hopefully lead the people of Colombia to choose leaders that are more, in line with their views economically. Same. I had issues,
yeah.
but she's back and better than ever. All right.
Yeah. As a caveat, just to build off what you said, like like the discourse, everyone was like, "Oh, I don't understand why you have to like ruin buildings and like be all violent or whatever." But it's just like the way I think about it is like violence is kind of like the most American thing I can think of. Like every significant like political or like change event in America is like through violence, like wars and just like acquisitions of lands. Like we've had like the Civil War, the Revolution, like the war with Mexico to like claim like California and all that stuff. And it's just like California is like a violent like regime that like colonizes a lot of places, and it's kind of like very embedded in the culture. So
And
it's like, yeah.
And if I may add to that, like I've, in my opinion, I feel or I've seen that a lot of times a bigger group of people is blamed for what a small group of people do. And although people could be defending themselves when they've been attacked, which is a different thing than really destroying just, public buildings or whatever, just cause they're just really trying to defend themselves. And if you are out there trying to fight for something and then they start attacking you, you're just going to defend yourself. What else are you going to do? But then also there were I remember some incidents here in LA were very small, but they make it look so much bigger than what it was, so that everyone who is protesting could look back. And so I think that that's also that other part, right? The other side of the coin as well. So yeah, but my 2 cents.
Right. No, for sure. I totally agree. And I think, with this heavy news, I think we should also maybe bring up some lighter news, a little bit more optimistic or funny, because we don't want to leave people just like sitting with these deep, complicated, political situations. So does anybody else have any stories they want to bring up? I know I wanted to bring up one little funny thing that was going around social media. And that was that whole scene in the Selena series where Beyonce meets Selena. And I remember first seeing this clip, and like I thought it was a joke. I thought it was like, no, like they're obviously like pandering, or I don't know what it even would be called. But stories did come out later that Beyonce did in fact meet Selena at a mall in the 90s. It probably didn't happen the way that it was portrayed on TV with like, cheesy actors or whatever. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting thing. And I have other feelings about the Selena TV
I,
series. I don't personally watch it. Um, But yeah, I just thought that was like a funny little thing that happened this past
I,
week.
I have watched some of the episodes just because I'm visiting friends or whatever. Like they start watching that on TV, and I'm like, okay, okay, Selena. But and the other part is like it's almost like in everywhere. I mean, I love Selena. Don't take me wrong. Don't attack me, anybody. But it's just that sometimes it's just like just the only famous, Latinx person out there, right? And honestly, like there are so many other artists and actors, and that I think, for example, Celia Cruz would be one of the people that I would love to see on a big screen, right? And there was a series, actually, a TV show for Celia, which I loved, by the way. I would completely recommend it. And it's amazing, and it just pictures who I thought it was, and the actors are so much better than Selena. I'm sorry that this series is just so bad. But did I say that out loud? I'm sorry. But so you talk about this encounter between Beyonce and her today when we were talking about it, and I was like, I have to see this, so I'm gonna have to watch that bad acting, and then some of that conversation, really to put myself up to date, like you all. But I can't wait to laugh just like you, because you
Right.
were really having your moment when you thought about it and sharing with us. So
Right.
I haven't seen the show at all, but like I did see that clip because Rogelio brought it up like a week ago, and I was like, I have to see this, and yeah, it's quite amusing. But the way that I feel about that is like I think it's interesting because like you were talking about how like Selena's like there's not just Selena, but I think like the fascination with her and so the reason that she's so prominent in like a lot of like the culture and like stuff that's present to us is because particularly I think because she's Chicana, like she was born in America. I think that's like is very representative of a very prominent group of like Latino people in America. So I feel like she's very present because of that, like simply because she's an American, and she's like more relatable, I guess, because of that, and kind of like her struggle with like the culture and like the dual identity and stuff like that. So I think maybe more people might like her because of that.
Right, and also because she died so young and so tragically, and so it makes sense that she gets as much attention as she does.
yeah.
But I totally see Roger's point where it's just like after a while it's like, do we have no other cultural icons that we can pull from? Like, are we not gonna? Is everything just gonna be a repeat of Selena over and over again? Yes, like she's an icon. We should give her all her flowers, literally, because she loves a flower motif, right? But but also like we should also like look around and celebrate other people in our community who haven't gotten that spotlight, and especially people who have traditionally been totally shunned by the larger community, whether it's Afro Latinx people, whether it's LGBTQ plus people who are in our community. Like there's so many more stories that we can be amplifying, but then everything goes back to Selena, Frida Kahlo, J Lo, like Conchas, and
Leave J-Lo out of this conversation. Okay, I'm joking.
that's for another day, Roger. We could go toe to toe on her because
We can. Yeah.
not a fan, not a fan.
No, yeah, there are tons of other wonderful queer Latinx folks that I think are also very talented musicians that obviously for very clear reasons aren't as popular.
Right.
It's not always about talent. One that I really like Omar Apollo. I just love him. He's queer. He's Mexican. He's from Indiana. I just really enjoy him. If you like some alt rock indie stuff.
Whom again?
Omar Apollo. Yeah,
Omar
he's
Apollo.
queer.
Shout out Omar. But yeah, no,
Yes.
I think it's great. And maybe we should make it a point to shout out more of these artists on a regular basis, because more people need to know about queer artists, but also like queer artists of color. Particularly.
Yes, very that.
Right.
Very talented ones.
So we only have a couple minutes till commercial, but I did want to bring up quickly something about the COVID vaccine or the COVID numbers that you wanted to say, Nigel. So do you mind giving like a quick 1-minute summary of what was discovered?
Okay, yeah. So basically, in the past couple months, UCLA did this really extensive study focusing on like COVID-related deaths by race and categories by different age groups. So essentially, it's as expected, the older groups were having higher concentrations and proportions of death. but the deviation particularly was about Latinx people and those that were dying from COVID. So for me, when I was reading it, the most alarming information was that for the group of ages 18 to 34, Latino people or Latinx identified folks were dying at 5 times the rate of white folk. So I think a lot of the times when we're thinking about the vaccines and maybe being a little bit afraid or skeptical, I think we need to take into account like people that don't have health insurance, people who are immunocompromised, people that have pre-existing conditions. It's not necessarily just about you and the individual. It's about protecting our communities because we are dying at faster rates, and it's about protecting each other because there are a lot of institutions that will not support or protect us. And these are things that we can do on our own to protect each other and make sure we're all good. So I urge you, if you haven't, to get the vaccine. It's really easy now. You can just walk into a lot of sites now and just get it. My arm was sore for like a day, and that was it. And, you know, if you do end up getting sick, it just means your immune system is working. So it's not a bad thing if you have side effects.
Yeah. Yes, no, I agree. If I may add to that.
Right.
Yes,
perfectly said.
There has been conversations with people where they are like, no, I'm so against the vaccine. The government don't know anything. Science don't know anything. And I'm like, no, I'm so pro the vaccine because I want to protect me. I want to protect others. I want to be part of the, you know, progress on this, right? Mm-hmm. Like I want to make sure that I'm doing my part, you know, on this fight against COVID-19. But I do see many different obstacles for people to get the vaccine. But I think that there are more people that can get vaccinated that are just opting not to. And yeah, sometimes I don't understand. Like whoever I hang with, I'm like, have you been vaccinated? Because I have. And so, you know, like, so it's kind of like, just kind of like that message right there, right? Like, it's important basically for you to get vaccinated. Exactly. If you want to hang with me.
I mean, sometimes you have to like, you know, schedule their appointments for them if you have to, you know, do that first step. But yeah, no. Right. No,
herd immunity works. It works. Right. That's why people don't get polio anymore.
Exactly. So yeah, great message to leave us off on before we go to commercial. So when we're back, we're going to bring up the main topic. So we're just going to talk about our motivations for getting into the show and give you a little bit more background about ourselves and our relationship with our Latinidad. So stay tuned for that.
Hi, my name is Darryl, and I'm a him. And you'll probably click this video because you're wondering about the U equals U. Undetectable equals untransmittable. These two letters have changed the game for people living with HIV. Oftentimes, people have been afraid of disclosing their status, being intimate, or having been stigmatized for being positive. It's unfair. No one should feel uncomfortable about these things. That's where U equals U comes into play. If you are positive, have been virally suppressed for at least 6 months, and taking your medication, then guess what? The transmission is impossible. Yes, impossible. And if you don't believe me, you can ask the Center for Disease Control. They will back this up and have been since 2017 with hundreds of experts and organizations. Now, what does that mean to be virally suppressed? It means that you have 50 or less copies of the HIV virus per milliliter of blood. Now, I know it's hard to imagine, but that's a tiny amount. Taking your HIV medication daily, without fail, most people are able to become undetectable within 1 to 6 months. Now, we wish we could say everyone is able to reach U equals U status, but we know that sometimes it is harder for other people for different reasons. However, for the majority that do reach undetectable and continue to take their medication daily, there are no risks for transmission. Of course, we encourage safe sex practices because there are other STIs that can be transmitted, but HIV won't be one of them. If you have any other questions or concerns, you can contact us here. Thank you guys for watching.
Hello, everyone. We are back. Okay, are we
Okay.
good? All right.
Yeah.
Sorry, y'all. Spectrum is having issues. So, welcome back to the Link Latinx. Now we are moving on to our main topic, which is getting to know a little bit more about the Link Latinx. Yeah, I think we have a graphic for this too, maybe.
Yes, we do. Oh, beautiful waterfall, transcendent. Okay, so should we get into it? I guess now we're just going to talk about who we are, what our backgrounds are, why we're doing this. Does anyone want to go first? Or
For sure. I might as well take advantage of the fact that you all can hear me and see me right now. So, um, I'm Rogelio. Everybody kind of already knows me, so I won't go on for too long. I am the program coordinator of our Trans Connections program, which is for trans people of color 18 to 29. I grew up in Compton, California, which is, a local suburb of Los Angeles here, very much known for all the worst things. Well, no, a lot of great artists came out of Compton, so let me not say that. But, it's also known for its level of poverty, its really bad schools, and the level of crime. And I was raised in a Mexican immigrant household. I'm first generation here, I guess second generation American, because my parents are technically like Americans, but immigrants. Um, and so, yeah, I think so much of my life has been shaped by just being around so many other Mexican people. I wasn't even around people of other like ethnic groups really until college. I went to college on the East Coast where there are a lot of Puerto Ricans and Dominicans, and that's kind of like the predominant Latinx culture over there. So yeah, I really got into like connecting more with my culture in college because I was away from it for like the first time in my life. Um, and so, yeah, I think that's kind of left me in where I am today. I'm very much passionate about talking about issues within our community, but I'm also very critical of many of the aspects within our community that makes it harder for us to do that sometimes. And that's kind of our motivations for the show too, to kind of address a lot of the issues that are particularly relevant to the Latinx community. Not necessarily because we don't feel like we get enough shine, but to just bridge a lot of the gaps because the problems that we face are similar to the problems that a lot of Black people face. And there are also Black people within the Latinx community because Latinx isn't a race, right? And so there's so many issues to get into and exciting conversations that are to be had. But I'll go ahead and let Roger and Nigel take over and give a little bit of background about themselves.
Sure, I can go next. Once again, my name is Roger Cediles. I am the program manager of the substance abuse programs at the prevention department here at APLA Health. And I have been working within the field of HIV prevention since 2007. I started working in this field because when I was in a very young age, I was able to learn about STDs and HIV. And as I was growing up, I learned, and by the way, I grew up in Nicaragua. I came to the United States when I was 16 years old. So I had just finished my high school. And I remember that when I came here, I started realizing that a lot of the youth in my country did not have the opportunity to really learn about HIV and STDs and how to protect themselves, for example, right? The government never really gave any funding for anything like that, like educational material or anything like that. And if you get it, like the way I did was because someone, had a free class that they were putting on their own and they were asking for donations, stuff like that. And so it inspired me since I was really young. And I remember in Nicaragua, I used to see TV shows, and I saw places like APLA or the Gay and Lesbian Center, which is, places that are really famous that comes out on TV. And I would be like, I would love to work there one day. I never thought it was going to be reality, to be honest with you. I work in a different field before, but then when I had the opportunity to get in this field, I took the opportunity, I trained, I learned, and so that's how I started working here. And then also I had some experience with substance abuse, not necessarily directly, but with a lot of people that I loved. And I wanted to minimize the risk of transmission of HIV or Hep C for people who were substance users. And so this was the perfect opportunity to start working in this field. I worked as a prevention training specialist for many years. Then I became a coordinator. Then I became a manager. And I love what I do. I love to help the community. The programs that under the substance abuse programs here at APLA, they're harm reduction based programs. We work with youth 18 to 24. I'm gonna leave that part for Nigel. And also we work with the program for men who have sex with men who use methamphetamine, and we help them in anywhere of their use. Like if they might be using right now, they might have quit for a few months and they just kind of want to talk about it. There's a lot of misinformation for the Latino community. There was a whole different issues going on that when we started doing groups in Spanish, we were finding out things like I try meth because an employer offered it to me at whatever fast food place, and I didn't know what it was, and I'm having these issues now, and I don't know what's going on. So, like, what I'm saying is, like, their experience with drugs were different than the experiences that I have from the other different groups of folks, right? So the program is open for anyone any race, any age, 13 and up or 12 and up, and they can be using, not using, and just the self-identified men who have sex with men. And I think I'm gonna stop there.
Okay, I'll go next now. So hi, I'm Nigel. I've been here like twice before, so you probably don't remember me. But I'm the prevention training specialist for Project Impact under the substance abuse team. So Roger's my boss. So I do a behavioral intervention for young queer men of color, aged 18 to 24. So just a bunch of series of discussions on health and wellness and how I can support you in whatever way that may be. So my experiences, I grew up in the East LA area. My family is super like Chicano, so like we've been here for like decades. So my family is quite Americanized. So I do have a bit of a different perspective on like a lot of things, I feel like. So my connection with being Mexican was always to be really proud of like my Chicano identity and being very like macho and proud and all that stuff. My background was in health promotion. I really, as I grew up, wanted to work with Latino people. I wanted to fix like a lot of problems that I had seen in the Latinx community. So that was always my main focus going forwards and pursuing my education. Originally, I wanted to be a doctor, and I realized that that wasn't for me. So I figured I could help more people by going into public health. So that's what I've done. And then just on my own discovery of like personal identity, I realized that LGBT health issues are also really important to me. So growing up, I always wanted to figure out how I could mesh those, and I ended up here at APLA Health because it's at the perfect intersection of race, ethnicity, and queer status. So this is a great way for me to help the groups of people that I love. That was pretty much it for Nigel, right? I feel like I'm missing questions.
No, you're good. You're good. I think that covers all the bases. And no, I love to hear that because that's also why I came into APLA. You know, I remember reading the role or the position for my job, the one that I had before, obviously. And I was like, wow, like it's hitting all the marks as to like, who I am. So this sounds like the place where I'd be able to grow and learn and be with other people who are like me. And then, of course, it was through that I wound up like, finding out that it wasn't for me and I transitioned, but, that's a story for another day. But so I think that a lot of us, we all come with different perspectives to like, issues within our community. And I think that that's great that we like showcase them. I am the child of immigrants. Roger is from Nicaragua himself. Nigel has been here for generations. His family has been here for generations, but has that strong like Chicano history. So yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about our motivations for doing the show. We launched the show or announced that we were going to do the show last week on Cinco de Mayo. We had a bit of an educational mixer. So did somebody want to talk a little bit about what we did last Wednesday?
Sure, I guess I can start. So we, in discussions of doing the show, we were talking about Cinco de Mayo and doing something special about Cinco de Mayo. And the people we were talking about were asking questions about, so you all celebrate it, right? I don't celebrate Cinco de Mayo. I'm from Nicaragua. We have nothing to do with it. But, you know, we're in the United States, and a lot of people do celebrate Cinco de Mayo, not necessarily knowing what is it for, or, you know, people in general think that this is the Independence Day of Mexico. And, you know, people have all these general ideas. So we found the need of kind of like clarifying these things with coworkers, just making sure that we're all on the same page and that we have the right information. Because just the way I might not have that information before, or the complete information, and I was able to educate myself to have the conversation with our coworkers. There could have been other people who also were in the same situation. So that's how we kind of like started like having these conversations and about different things, that how different we are, how similar we are, and how different we are. And you know, for example, I'm sure you didn't know this, Mother's Day for Nicaragua is May 30th. And so people celebrate on the 10th. And I was getting messages from people, oh, you forgot about me on Mother's Day. It's like I never celebrate Mother's Day on that day. And we talk about also the different mixes that make who we are, right? Because we might be from the same country, and even in the same country, there are so many different mixes of races and people that, you know, make us who we are. But we tend to say, well, I'm Nicaraguan, like that just covers it all. And in reality, it doesn't. You know, there's so much more to look into each of our families and, you know, ancestry and all of that. So I'm just gonna stop there. Maybe Nigel want to continue.
Yeah, so basically the whole point of our discussion with our coworkers was kind of to dispel any like misinformation that they might have seen or heard about Cinco de Mayo. So we kind of clarified the historical context of what it actually means, and it's kind of like what it means now to people, because it's a very American holiday. Like most Mexicans don't celebrate it. And we talked about maybe how ways that they could be culturally competent and celebrated if they so chose to. So like, you know, supporting Latinx people during these times, you know, supporting businesses, art, stuff like that. So I thought it went pretty well. It was enjoyable. It was fun. We have food.
Right. Food always makes the information go down a little bit easier, right? Mm-hmm. But no, yeah, I think that we very intentionally went into it almost like not necessarily a joke, but almost to be almost like a play on it, you know, like we did this on Cinco de Mayo. We bought Mexican food, but like it was really an educational opportunity. And I think it sparked a lot of great conversation that kind of showed us why this show is so important. So I want to emphasize that, like, in terms of racism, I don't think that that's why, you know, we did the show. We didn't feel like, you know, Latinx people weren't being represented or heard or any kind of thing like that. Because I still very much think that in order to combat racism, we have to center Black people and address the anti-Blackness within our own community, because there are lots of Black Latinos and they are very much ignored, or if not ignored, just completely stigmatized, right? Hi, yeah, exactly. And so I think it's important to make that point, that this isn't because we didn't feel like, you know, we didn't get a voice or something. This is because we found that it's a great opportunity to share with other people that a lot of the issues that are affecting the Latinx community are affecting other communities as well. You know, we deal with colorism. We deal with the complicated racial dynamics of each of our countries. We deal with homophobia, transphobia, you know, just as much, if not worse, in a lot of our cultures, right? And so I think that there's so many interesting conversations to be had with the show. And so I did want to ask one probing question. So Latinx, Latinidad, it's all kind of a loaded term, you know. It was formed, I think, in the 70s, so it's still a relatively new term. It's the most common term to use to refer to our own community. But I know that it's very complicated for a lot of people because it's not a race. Some people who are classified under it are like, no, I'd rather just identify as Mexican, or I'd rather just identify as Brazilian, or whatever it is. Some people think that we should, you know, use other terms. Some people are very gung-ho about using the term Latinx to be very gender inclusive. We have Latinx coming up to make it more phonetically in line with like Spanish and how it's spoken. And so what is your all's relationship with Latinidad? Thinking about, you know, your entire experience, how you view Latinidad and how that's kind of shaped you and your experiences.
What an interesting question.
Right.
Well, when I think about it, I'm like, as I buy time to think. So basically, when I think of Latinidad and I think about what it means to me and like my perspective on the world, I guess I think of it as like kind of like the culture and like ideals, I guess, of a lot of like the more prominent like Latino figures in my life and values that they've instilled upon me. Because when I think about like the term Latino and like kind of like breaking down like I guess like ethnic and racial backgrounds, it's such an ambiguous thing. I think it's a word that has a lot of meaning but also no meaning at all because we're such a mixed group of people that like honestly like I've kind of gotten to a point where I just really honestly don't care about like the specifics of my background. I just kind of like exist, I guess, because it's like I know that I never have like a clear depiction of like my perfect breakdown or whatever, or like what the racial things are because I don't identify as white. I never have. That hasn't been my experience. The values and the way people perceive me, I've always been like brown. You know, I was a little bit darker when I was younger too, and I grew up around brown people, and that was all I knew for the longest time. And I'm definitely not indigenous. I have relatives that look incredibly indigenous, very like what you would think of when you think of an indigenous person. But I don't have any of their cultural values. I never practiced any of that. I didn't learn about it. So I don't feel comfortable obviously claiming that. So I think kind of Latinidad is just kind of like the culmination of like those beliefs and just kind of like how people can comfortably, I guess, express like not necessarily fitting into like the major categorizations of people.
It's so interesting to me because, like you said, we are so different. We have so many mixes. It's hard to really know all of the, I'm 10% this, I'm 10% that. The way I think of Latinidad, is that how you mention it, Rogelio?
Yeah.
Or Latinx or Latino people? It's all these flavors of people and all these different ways of seeing things. In growing up in Nicaragua, we didn't have our own TV channels, and so we will have to watch TV from Colombia, Venezuela, Argentina, and different countries. In Brazil, and even in telenovelas, you will be able to see how different cultures were and how, for example, Brazil was so much open in a lot of subjects where other places, were not. So it's all this. The other part is the how what's the word? How we really fight for what we want. Like we work hard, we're hard workers, and we do the work that we need to do to maintain our families, to help each other in our families, and it's just like that makes me feel really prideful for our Latinx community. The fact that we tend to we're not scared of working. It doesn't matter what it is that we need to do, washing cars, washing dishes, whatever it is that we need to to keep our family afloat. That's one of the things that I get so much pride of our Latino community. I don't know what else to add, but just the fact that acknowledging that we're so similar, but we're so different at the same time, and
Right.
and we can learn how to love each other, and help each other. Coming to United States was a shock for me because in Nicaragua I was like, I love everyone, and then you come here and it was kind of like people would tell you like, don't talk to so and so because she's Salvadorian or she's Mexican or she's this and she's that, and I was like, what's the problem? Like I didn't get it at first. We didn't have that in Nicaragua. If anything, if someone will come from a different country, we will we'll like celebrate that. You know what I mean? Like it would be like, oh, nice, somebody from a different country with a different culture or something to learn. But then you got here, and it was just kind of like people trying to make their own little groups, and it's just like,
Right.
there's no need of that. So that's something
Right.
to
No,
think
I
that.
think if anything, that kind of speaks to a larger issue with like, even the term Latinx, Latino, Latinidad, whatever. A lot of that is rooted in the U.S., right? Because the U.S. came up with that term to refer to people from that background, to kind of just put us all in a box. And like you said, like when you get here, we realize that like, yeah, we might have that one label uniting us, but there are also so many differences amongst our groups that it almost feels arbitrary that you would classify like a Mexican person in with like
Oh,
somebody from,
Rogelio, we lost you.
Belize. Oh no, not again. Am I here?
Oh, I
Okay,
can hear you and see you.
Oh, okay.
so I don't know if you want to add anything to Rogelio's comments. Oh, you're back.
Okay. Okay. It might just be you, Roger, this time, but I don't
Yeah, I can
know.
see both of you fine.
I don't know. But anyway, so another thing I wanted to talk on with Latinidad is the fact that, like, for a long time, I kind of felt isolated from that term or from my identity. And I think it's partly because I grew up in a place that's very, very Mexican. The area I was from was very predominantly Mexican. And so I never felt a need to, like, embrace my culture because I feel like I was always surrounded by it. And I also feel like I oftentimes was shut out of my own culture because I was a very like queer child. I was very feminine, and that was not seen as being, of my culture because machismo is such a like prominent thing within our culture. If you are, less masculine as somebody who's assigned male at birth, then you are almost seen as less Latinx also. And that's kind of what I think about when I think about that term is how for a long time I felt kind of isolated from that term. And because I was raised in LA, I feel even more isolated by it because it's something that's so predominant. And I think that a lot of people who grew up in LA and are maybe like first, second, or even more generations out start to identify less and less with that identity because, they don't feel the need to. They are, they have interests and things that like are outside of that, especially if you're queer. And so I feel like that kind of touches on some of the more complicated aspects of our identity, how the term Latinidad is kind of loaded because it doesn't just mean demographics, it also has become like a cultural thing. And if you don't meet like certain check marks, then you're seen as less that. I mean, even people who don't speak Spanish are seen as less, of the culture. Not considering that, like, there's a whole country, Brazil, that they don't speak Spanish predominantly, that's still included. So it's all just like, complicated, jumbled mess of a community. But, it's also great because I think
Do we have
we
more time in
also,
this segment, Rogelio? I don't know if you're frozen or it's me.
oh no, yeah, we
Am
have
I
a little bit
Oh
of
frozen?
no,
time.
it's you. Yeah.
It's
Oh,
you.
so let me know when I'm good because I see Rogelio frozen.
Oh no. But yeah, so like I'm just thinking about
Go ahead, Nigel. Can you
Oh,
see me
okay.
now?
I can see both of you. I don't know what the technical difficulties are.
right. You might have to reload, Roger.
Yeah.
I don't
Um,
know.
should we keep going off of your point,
Yeah,
Rogelio?
yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So just building off of what you said about like Latinidad, and just kind of like being in LA. I think it's interesting because I relate to a lot of what you said. Just kind of like me being queer as a kid. I always kind of felt like the black sheep of the family, even though, like, for obvious reasons, because I was a bit more feminine as a child. I remember getting scolded a lot for that, getting called chillon all the time, because I was such a sensitive kid and being bullied by that by like older people in my family. And just I think there's a lot of hypocrisy in like Latinidad because it's like super about like the family and like making sure we're all good. Family always comes first. That's like what I was always told as a kid. But there's a lot of like discrimination and just like really really mean comments and discrimination and just hateful stuff that I've heard from like my family members because of just the way I am or just existing. Um, and I think it doesn't. Yeah, it supersedes like generations. It's just like so deeply embedded in our culture, and it's just like we always talk about this in the office. It's like being queer and being brown is so traumatic. So
Right.
dramatic.
Exactly. No, yeah, and I think you spoke a lot to like those contradictions. I think that's a really good point because there are these contradictions where you're supposed to like value family before anything, right? But at the
Mhm.
same time, that same family is, makes it really hard for you to embrace them sometimes, or to embrace yourself, which can make it really hard, especially as queer people, because we have struggled so much to come to the point where we can accept ourselves and can stand in our truth regardless of what other people are going to say, that you almost feel like you're put in that position that like me being myself is seen as disrespectful or as seen as, contrary to my family and my culture. And that could be super, super hard to deal with, which is why so many of us rely on chosen family, and on forming those interests that are outside of our families or our culture, sadly enough. So I think, yeah, that just speaks to the point that we need to foster more like culture, more queer like culture that's also like brown and that's also like specific to our culture. Because some of the best relationships I have are with other queer, Latinx people or queer people of color, where we can just relate on that level that's like different. Because we understand the multiple levels and intersections, we can make all the same jokes, that kind of stuff.
That good old trauma bonding. I'm just kidding,
Right.
but not really.
Right. So Roger, are you back, Roger? Are you
I
good?
believe so. What do you think? Is
Yay.
it working now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So if you lose me, I'm sorry because I think there might be some work. They might be doing some work here with our internet. So that might be the reason. So I apologize to everybody if that happens. But until that happens, I'm gonna continue talking. And so no, and I relate with everything that you guys have said. And I gotta say that as an older person in the group and someone that grew up in Nicaragua and all of that, I mean, the way I see things it's different, I mean, it's just what it is. I didn't grow up here. English is really my second language. Like, I learned it as a grown up. And there's challenges, and it's almost like I feel like a lot of times I gotta prove myself with a lot of people because of the language barrier. Sometimes has been taken as, oh, he's not intelligent enough, or he's not because he don't speak the correct way, or his accent gets on the way, and things like that. And so I always have to push a little bit more. If there's a presentation to do, for example, I have to really work on the words that I'm going to utilize, because a lot of times I feel that when I'm nervous, if I don't remember the pronunciation, the way I'm supposed to, then I might look like I don't know the information of what I am sharing or trying to share with people. And so a lot of times, it's a different battle, I guess I gotta say. Like, it has, different connotations as well. And so I can imagine that's the experience for a lot of Latinos that came here, grown up, and learned English as their second language, and
Right.
who are actually professionals in their whatever they're from, and went to university, finished their careers, and are completely smart. But it's just that barrier that makes it a little harder for them. But we still push. We still push and try. And so yeah. So I guess that's one of the things I can share too.
No, yeah. Thank you for sharing. I think that's a great point to bring up, because there's almost like two sides to that. Not to like compare at all, because like my struggle doesn't at all, like, I'm still at an advantage, but like, I get it like on the other side where like my Spanish is made fun of a lot in like Latinx spaces. And like I'm like insecure to even speak Spanish. And obviously that's not the same because we live here, where I'm still gonna have the advantage over somebody who speaks Spanish as their first language. But yeah, I think that's a great point to bring up, Roger, that like there's so many elements that shape our experience here. But yeah, I wanted to quickly close by doing a final segment, which is my personal favorite, of course. And that is our Square Up segment. So Square Up is where we share our unpopular opinions. So yeah, and I have plenty of those. So,
We
so
know,
one,
Rogelio, we know.
right. So I'll go ahead and start us off and say that.
Oh, we're going with the Notebook, huh?
Oh yeah, getting ready to read. But no, I think that being prideful in a country is. I have a problem with having pride in a country. Like I say this as I have my Mexican flag up, but still, it's like I feel very complicated about it because, like, if you're from a country, then I completely get honoring your culture. But I think this like blind nationalism to just like Viva Mexico, yes, love Mexico, like all of this. I feel like it takes away from keeping like the government accountable. You know, you can be
Mhm.
celebratory of your culture, of the people within your culture, of all your favorite things about these countries, but to blindly just say things like Viva Mexico or to support everything that Mexico does on a global scale just because it's like you feel some weird loyalty to it. It kind of ignores the fact that Mexico, especially now, how it is a lot more like the US than you'd like to think, you know, in terms of the level of corruption, the level of, you know, them not necessarily putting the needs of their citizens first. And so yeah, I have personally tried to step away from like this, you know, celebrating of the flag and celebrating of Mexico as a country, and like to focus more on like the people, the culture, and you know, other things like that. So yeah, that's a little unpopular opinion of mine. Anybody else want to
Very.
share?
I feel. I can go next. So I was thinking about this a lot. Oh, we lost Roger. So I've been going through a lot of panels and presentations on. You already know on certain topics, and it's just getting to a point where it's like if you've been to one, you've been to them all. So my unpopular opinion is that like y'all need to come up with something new. Like, come on, be creative now. Like y'all are educated, y'all are creatives. Y'all should be able to like push the discussion a little bit more outside the norms. Because I feel like I've been in a lot of panels and discussions, or even when we have like breakout rooms or whatever now, because it's through Zoom. Just kind of like the rhetoric that they're pushing is just very redundant, and then it just like gets to a point where it's like if I speak, it's like nobody wants to hear what I want to say because I have some, I guess, more progressive views when it comes to public health. But like, can you ever be too progressive with public health? In my opinion, you can't. You really can't. You just give people what they need. Anyways,
Right.
but I challenge y'all, if you're throwing a panel, come up with something new, please. I beg of you. I can't like stand to listen to the same, oh, make the message, make sure that they can understand, make sure it targets the group, like I took my introduction to public health class my first year at university is like it's been shoved down my throat. I get it. I really do. I promise you.
Well,
So that's mine.
I'm not going to say anything about that one. I'm kidding. But no, no, I mean, I totally agree. I think that a lot of these panels are
So
just, you
I'm not
know,
sure if my microphone is working. Can you hear me?
yeah, we
Yes,
can
I
hear
hear
you.
you.
You're
You
good.
can?
Yeah,
I
you're coming
cannot
in
hear
right
you
at the
now.
end, Roger.
That's so bad. But I'm sorry to interrupt because I don't know what part were you in, but I just wanted to say that my internet at work is not working. Say bye to everyone, to everybody there watching, and there will be more episodes that we can talk about anything that you want us to talk about. And I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity, and thank you so much, guys. You're amazing, and I love your opinions and all of that. Don't forget, Rogelio, to talk about condoms used or not. You know what we that conversation we had. Well, if you want to, but next time, then we should do it next time. Okay.
Right. No, yeah, for
Bye,
sure. Save it for the
everyone.
next one. Bye, Roger.
Right.
So yeah, sorry about the
Honestly.
technical difficulties. We hopefully will not have that problem in next month's show. But you know, the first show always has a few kinks. You know, we always have to be ready for things to go wrong in the dress rehearsal. So you know, we'll just call this the Link Latinx dress rehearsal. And we'll be back next month with a new topic. We definitely want to delve into so many of the complicated issues around race in our community, and so many more issues relevant to the field, because at the end of the day, we do sexual health here at APLA. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us for this very first episode of the Link Latinx. I am Rogelio, one of your co-hosts and coordinator of Trans Connections. That's Nigel. And that is the show for you. Thank you all so much and have a good one.
Bye bye.
Bye.